Hey everyone, Randy Silver here. It's one of those weeks. Lily and the rest of the fabulous pod production team are away at Mind the Product and Pendo's Roadshow in Amsterdam, having a great time and recording some of the speakers there for future episodes. I estimate they got, let's say four, maybe five fantastic guests. So today it's just me and Neil Vass, engineering manager at the UK's fabulous co op, someone I've been wanting to chat to for a long time about how to get better at estimating. I reckon you'll love it. Neil, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So for people who don't know you, I've known you through communities and talks and things for years, but for anyone who doesn't know you, let's do a quick intro. What are you doing these days? And you're not actually a product manager at this point, but how did you get into this whole producty world in the first place?
Good question. So I'm a engineering manager at the Co-op in Manchester now. So Co-op is 180 years old and employs 65,000 people. There's a couple of headline facts I like to give. And that's across stores and online sales and funeral homes and insurance. Really varied in there. I've had many different jobs at the Co-op in just 6 years. I was reeling them off the other day in sort of delivery management and sort of coaching and other things like that. And in the past, I've varied between like software and delivery. So I've never actually had product in my job title. But I was thinking earlier, how did I get near the idea of this product game? When I was a software developer, I came across all this agile stuff too many years ago to count. And I tried out Scrum. So it was a long time before I met anyone whose job title had product in it. But I was explaining to people, you're in the business, you're paying for this team. You know how people use this. Your role here is product owner, and I'll help you navigate that. Here's what it says. Here's where you get to make decisions. Here's why it's better for you if we don't make all the decisions up front. It worked
Mhm.
fabulously, much better than what we tried before. So I've been quite a fan of producty things ever since.
Fantastic. And the thing we're going to talk about today is you ran an exercise that I attended, oh God, quite a while back now, about estimation. That was an awful lot of fun. And estimation has always seemed like a bit of a dark art. But let's start at the very basics of this. And this may seem really obvious, but why do we even bother with estimation? I mean, we spend all the time with our teams estimating things. It always takes longer than we say, and all we're really doing is creating this noose for our stakeholders to hang us with when we say, "Oh, yeah, it's gonna take about this long." So why do we do it?
Oh, there's some good parts in that question. I would start with like if you absolutely it's a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, and often you get less good results out of it than you hope. If you're in a position where you can get away with not estimating, absolutely don't, is my advice. I've been there before. I've worked on teams before where you've got loads of challenges and things that worry you, but estimation doesn't have to be one of them. So the hashtag no estimates, the Woody Zero style, we'll take a small step, we'll back off if it doesn't work. That can exist, but I've never managed to just say, we're not estimating now, and that be fine if you're not got the conditions for success already. So depending on where you are right now, you'll have to do some other things. That might be a useful goal to aim towards, but you have to try and move people on that journey. Just saying I'm not gonna doesn't work. And that part about a noose who hang ourselves with, that's like the major part of the headache. If we're all honestly saying like the future's uncertain, but it would be useful if we knew something about when this might go live or what we're going into with this. Can we try our best guess to see where it gets us? If we could do that, and honestly, like believe we're all trying and giving our best info, it'd be super valuable, even if it's vague. Often it does feel like a battle. You've got to cover yourself. I dread to think of the amount of sort of time and mind share lost to how can we not get in trouble with this, or how can I make sure it doesn't come back to bite me later? What a waste.
Yeah, obviously, I'm being a bit facetious. I mean, I'm the first to ask for about how long do you think this is gonna be, or because I need it in my role to help forecast and say, "Well, okay, people are asking me for lots of things. How many things can I afford to say no to? What can I afford to say yes or maybe to?" And it's setting some expectations, or is our team big enough, or things like that. Do we
Mhm.
have what we need to do all this? So I totally see the need for it, but yeah, it always seems to backfire on the other side as well. It's this double-edged sword.
Absolutely. It's Yeah, what are you going to do with this info after I give it to you? And a good phrase is, I believe
Mm.
in using estimates responsibly. Whatever you say now, not going to be held against you. But that needs to be true. People need to believe it. Interesting thing I've discovered where if you can get away with it, the more you can make it, it doesn't matter. We're working in small steps. So you'll get something tomorrow and you can do something different the day after. And anytime you stop and walk away, you've got that. That's banked. That's a good position to be in. But lots of work isn't like that. When we start this, how long will it be before you've actually got something you can move on for? What am I getting into right here? Quite often people get exasperated with that. And
Mhm.
they'll reply, how long is a piece of string? Is a sort of classic question.
Twice
Mm,
as long as half a piece of string.
it all gets very philosophical. But I think people often know something about it. It might be quite wide and vague. And I think what people are really saying is, I don't think I can give you an answer to within some precision that's going to be useful for you. And if you can talk about that, about maybe a super wide range is all the info I need, because if it's not within something, we're not going to do it. That can be useful. So what's the question going to lead to, rather than just repercussions or us spending time and you writing it down and we'll never get anything out of it later?
And you also suggested, I mean, you've done a bunch of blog posts on this as well. And one of the things I really liked is you suggested asking a different question, not how long will this take? So what should we actually ask? Or how can we turn it around?
Ah, I like that. So in the situations where we have to sit down and say, what do you think? Like the more I can focus on, if you don't need to estimate, that's great. Or if you're doing things often enough and you're keeping track of how long things have taken in the past, we can just look it up in the chart. Get all the way away from asking anybody what they think. Those are good. But sometimes it's you've not got that info, you're not in that situation, it's a different kind of work. And you just need to say, what do we reckon? Well, so something that's really helped me is that idea of rather than how long would this take, including all the various things this might be, give me all the options and all the ways we might be able to add more people if that helps, or reshape teams or stop something else. It can feel like just endless possibilities. I could be here forever messing about with
Mhm.
different things. A good question can be like, what date would make you make a different decision? So what
Ooh.
answer would make us not go ahead with this? And that's useful in two ways, because sometimes people say, okay, like the information value of this is zero. Like there's no decision getting made based on it, which is interesting. But the other one is sometimes when you put like a line in the sand, if it's less than this, we're doing it. If it's more than that, sometimes it's still super uncertain. I don't know where it is, but a lot of the time you'd be surprised how often that just turns out a difficult, thorny question into a very, very clear cut one. If
Like, I
you're
need this by June, or else we've missed our window and it's just not worth it.
absolutely, and
And
if
then you can ask, what is it that you actually need? Is it this full-blown system, or is it just need to do one basic thing?
absolutely. And that says, so if the rough thing, a wide range, if that's roughly about June, we're still in trouble. But a surprising amount of the time, it's like June, you'll be lucky if it's 2027. Like, we're talking about years away
Which
from when it comes out. I've got no idea, but it's way past your date. Or equivalent, no, 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 it's a couple of months. So it's not going to be, it's still wide, it's still vague, but if you need that answer, you can go. So that is a nice shortcut. And that thing you're talking about where, well, what could we change now to get away from that line?
Mm.
Super useful. Staying away from that line is very important.
Okay, so we'll run the exercise that you did, shortly, but a couple more questions about saying the basics. What is estimation actually for? Who is it for?
I like it. There's a lot of reasons people ask for estimates, and a lot of them are the thing we talked about. It's a caricature, but sometimes it feels true. Like, give me a number so I can come back and tell you off later because you said it, including possibly I will force you to make it a smaller number. And sometimes the people asking are professional negotiators and others just want a quiet life. Sometimes it's for that. Not always, but I think there's shades of that in any discussion. And that's some of what makes it painful. You fear you might fall into that, even if it's not true. And the other thing it can be for, helpfully, the most useful things I've seen estimation used for is when it's something important, when it's actually going to make a decision based on it. And ideally, what you can do is get your estimate of if we only do this, if we only get this much done, we're okay. The thing's live, I wish I had more, or I've got a version of the feature that's done it. If you can get that number as far away from possible as a time when you absolutely want to stop working on it, you're in that beautiful, you've got time to iterate. We're getting out early. We've got time to do things about it. It's fabulous for that. And equivalently, if somebody doesn't want to, if you know you're making the decision, it's the whole roadmap is getting cleared for a very long time to come if I choose to do this, is useful because that's very different from this is just one more thing amongst many bets I can try and see out what's useful. So you have to be very, very confident it's a good idea if you're going to do it.
So that's in communication with stakeholders or people who are making plans based on it. Is that really who it's for, or should it be used mostly within a team? Is it more of a health metric of, we have an idea about how much we can do in a given time period in a sprint, if you're not using sprints, if you're doing Kanban, whatever, just to give you a rough estimate of how well the team is performing against their own estimates.
So I have seen a trend. I couldn't believe it was true for a while, the say do metric. And we say it's this and it turns out it's that. And people get
Mm.
ranked on it. And like your team is better than others. Far from useful. It's incredibly gameable and isn't actually related to any of the things you wanted. Like that'll drive you to do repeatable, safe and boring. Let's do something similar to what we've done before so I can do it. You're missing out on lots of good opportunities. Where I've seen estimates, some people make a differentiation like forecasting because you use data, but I think estimates just mean we're predicting the future. If you're
Mm.
keeping track of when things start and when they finish in your team and looking at, especially if you said, what did we think was a big job and what was a small job, that can be super eye opening. Because some of the things I've seen teams realize is the size of a work. We've got a sense that this is this short job and this is a bigger job, and I'm not much clearer than that. Sometimes that's got little relation to how long any of this actually takes to finish. There's a lot else going on. So possibly your most important question when you're asked to estimate something is, what else do we have going on while we're working on this? So
Mm.
as a team, what else have we got? And also as a team, what's our discipline? How many things do you put in the next up column that then get leapfrogged, sometimes for months at a time? So getting some insights into when we say this, what actually goes on and what might we do about it can be super useful. So it depends on the team. You'll find different things out about what's going on. And it may be every time we touch some part of the system, that's where endless bugs and confusion come out. So we should learn about that system or do something else about it so it's less scary to work with. And it can feel sometimes like everything we do might turn into a 6-month odyssey. And just having a bit of data on that, they loom large in the mind and stick with you. But actually, 90% of the things you do are done fairly quickly. And we're not actually in lots of danger of the multi-month odyssey coming up. It's rarer than it felt.
Some of what you just said reminds me of an episode we did a while ago with Liz Keogh, where she has a way of estimating complexity, essentially a complexity multiplier, which is, it's a one. If everyone on the team has done this, we know exactly how long it's going to take. It's a two. If, someone on the team has done this, but we've got a new person and they're going to try it this time. So it might take a bit longer, but we've got someone on the team who can help them. And there's three if there's someone else in the org has done this, so we know it's possible, we know we have access to them. I think a four is if some other company has done it, but we've never done it here. So might be different tech stack, maybe different capabilities, different priors essentially. And if five is no one's ever done this before.
That I've seen that scale. It's in the Kinevin for Everyone blog post.
Mm.
It's fabulous because that is, once you think about it and apply it to some work, it's like, oh, of course, this matters so much, but it so rarely comes up. They're like, how long will this be? Just how many weeks? How many person hours? How many whatever? And some things are a super different category of work. You're doing scientific research for some of those categories you said.
So we know how long this took us last time, but we're in different circumstances. We've got different people, or we're being asked to do three other things now. Whereas with all of these things are really critical as part of your estimation. What other kind of information when you go into a session with your team and you're saying, okay, we need to estimate a piece of work? What kind of information do we need to have at hand? What kind of research do we need to have done to create decent estimates?
Ah. So definition of decent is probably the most useful thing you can go in. What everyone wants and imagines is an estimate with as little error bar on it as possible and as true to what actually comes out in the end. Um, Things can be vague and uncertain, and I think sometimes that matters and sometimes less. So some of the qualities that might be useful is how much flex and discretion will the team have as we get into it. I've had things before where somebody wanted a fairly fluffily defined feature, like a new capability in the app that might touch some parts of the code I didn't know about, that might involve doing some things we haven't done before. But what I was confident in was some version of this is possible. And if there's reasons why we can't do, as we get into it, they really wanted this. If we have to do a super simple version of it, I've worked with these people before and I know it will be fine. So that made me able to give a super confident estimate. Like if we spend a few months on this, you will get some version of that. And I hope it'll be a really nice version as well, but we've got the flex. Whereas in other things, it's specified to the nth degree and we don't actually know till we get into doing the work. Or people will assume, when you've said, I'll get a website, how long will a website take? And then that can turn into everything I imagined. That's in scope, that's on it. So that kind of danger can help as well. Shorter than that, the more info you need, the more danger you're in. If there is the first version that's done and out there is the last version, and that is extremely close to when we're going to put it live to the public, it's almost impossible to get confidence on that. So the kind of information that we would want there is there ways to get decision points? Is there ways to get versions of this we can back off from? Is there things we can get value out of sooner? We talk about it a lot, but it's hard to actually keep in that discipline. So the idea that we could do a very small amount of this and then you've still got a lot of the value out of it, if you can get into that position as well, again, you can make a super decent estimate. Because I would say you'll get, I don't know when MVP will be, but it'll be a long time before we've said we'll stop iterating on it. So we're getting a good number of rounds at improving this once the first version's out. I love estimating things like that rather than what's the absolute first version. Could you make it less? Could you make it less? Can we cut it to the bone before you've even started?
This episode is brought to you by Pendo, the only all-in-one product experience platform.
Do you find yourself bouncing around multiple tools to uncover what's happening inside your product?
In one simple platform, Pendo makes it easy to both answer critical questions about how users engage with your product and take action.
First, Pendo is built around product analytics, enabling you to deeply understand user behavior so you can make strategic optimizations.
Next, Pendo lets you deploy in-app guides that lead users through the actions that matter most.
Then, Pendo integrates user feedback so you can capture and analyze how people feel and what people want.
And a new thing in Pendo, session replays, a very cool way to experience your users' actual experiences.
There's a good reason over 10,000 companies use it today.
Visit pendo.io/podcast to create your free Pendo account today and try it yourself.
Want to take your product-led know-how a step further? Check out Pendo and Mind the Product's lineup of free certification courses led by product experts and designed to help you grow and advance in your career.
Learn more today at pendo.io/podcast.
Pendo.
So there's a cognitive bias that comes up in this stuff, Neil. We all think we're pretty good at this. It's, we all think we're above 50%. We all think we're in the top quartile of things like this. In general, though, how accurate are we by default on estimation?
Oh, that's a good question. It's something that really shocked me when I looked into it, because you think sometimes it's the super precise to the hour, when will this be ready? Obviously, that's super hard. But if somebody's willing, enlightened and willing to say, just give me a wide range, give me a 90% confidence range on this. There's been studies, and I've tried things myself. Most people, if you took a bunch of random range questions and stuff and answered 10 of them, so giving a 90% range on all of them, you should get 9 out of 10, just the way luck and statistics works out. So how big is this? How long is that? How long is this? Give your range. So you're 90% confident the right answer's in there. Make it as wide as you need to. On average, most of us get 3 out of 10 or less. Oof. Which means with all the professional pressure, the boss wants it to be this, I'm meant to be a competent professional who can get things done, for all that pressure and drive to make it smaller numbers that would bias it with some trivia questions that don't matter, just to test your calibration. 30% feels like 90% confidence to us. So no wonder we're in such trouble.
Okay, so we've defined the scope of the problem. How do we actually get better at this? what are the first steps? Should we run the exercise, or are there things that we should do as a warm up first?
I think jumping into the exercise might give us a
Let's
chance.
do it.
It's something uh, I'd heard about the problem for some time of how bad we are, and I'd seen it play out in real life. Like, give me a wide range. What do you reckon? And you're still wrong. So there's a book called How to Measure Anything by Douglas Hubbard that tackled this exact problem. What I like so much about this book is this is really detailed. This exercise with lots of stories of how much you'd used it and detail on how to run it. It's fabulous. I would love that. That would make one whole book for me. But it's one chapter out of lots and lots of similar, really useful things that aren't even about estimation. So what he talks about is becoming a calibrated estimator. So your first step is, when I say I'm 90% confident the right answer's in here, and I might have to be very wide, I'm right
Mhm.
90% of the time. That's where we're trying to get to with the game. So you write out interesting trivia questions like that don't matter, like how many liters of water are in the Pacific Ocean? It's more than 10. It's less than, I don't know. Just give me a number. And the first time you do about 10 of them, I think everyone will get one of those terrible ones. It's interesting, even when somebody's told you how bad you are and you feel like you're making it wider, you do that. And then there's a series of, we'll try it again, and there's a little thought exercise you can do. There's a few different ones to run through. And I found running through these, it's a bit like a pub quiz. You feel funny, you feel satisfied when you get something right. Two things I found really useful about it is, one, it really, really does help. Like, we get better at it later. But even if it doesn't, I've seen a lot of value in it, because there's just often it's the same people in a team who get asked to estimate again and again. And there's a bit of a feeling that you're just being truculent, and how hard can it be? So this puts everyone, if you get stakeholders to do this as well, everyone realizes that, whoa, saying what you think is really, really hard. And
Mm.
it's the last bit that's good. This isn't just about estimation. So all kinds of value questions about the worth of doing anything are in a similar category. Like, how many people will press this button that we're talking about, how long it will take to go live? How much money might that bring in? Is a similar class of, I'll give a guess, but business cases are my favorite genre of fiction. So we all get to realize we've all got hard problems. And when you're getting asked to estimate, similar to all the other types of predicting the future problems. So if we're all in this together, and we've all played a fun pub quiz game together, hopefully we'll have a bit more empathy for each other later.
Okay, are you up to trying it? We'll do. How many questions should we do? Should 5 questions, and just to get a
Yeah,
feel for it?
yeah, that'd be absolutely great.
Okay,
I've pre-prepared some
excellent.
questions to quiz you. So the first one, how many islands make up the Philippines?
Ooh, definitely more than one, and I have no idea. I'm guessing dozens to hundreds, so I'll say between 1 and 1,000.
One and a
2 and
thousand.
1,000, actually. I know it's more than one, so we can start. We can reduce the range slightly.
Cool. And the aim with the 90% confidence, if we're asking for 100% confidence, you could say between 0 and 10 billion. I know it's in there.
Yeah.
90%. So you should be very surprised if your lower bound is too low, and very surprised if your high bound is too high. So 2 and 1,000 on the Philippines.
I mean,
You,
I think it's quite a bit lower, but I would. It kind of depends. He's a little tiny rock in the ocean, and considered an island for this case. So I'm just going to be really, really generous and give a number that I find ridiculous at this point, and try
cool.
and get to that 90%. But yeah, who knows?
Cool. The correct answer for how many islands that make up the Philippines is 7,641.
I am very surprised.
That right there might be the equivalent of this platform migration somebody's talking about, and you think you've given a comically large upper bound. You are actually 7 times too small with it. And that's exactly
Wow.
what teams get into.
Okay,
Um,
give me another.
I will. So the first thing that helps with this is just called repetition and feedback. So doing another is
Mhm.
exactly what we want to do. And the feedback on, wow, I need it to be a lot bigger, has already helped you. A lot of us get no feedback ever on any of our estimates. Nobody
Mm.
comes back and tells you exactly where you got wrong. So we're already ahead of the game. For the next one, what's the weight of a £1 coin? Now, Lou, you live in the UK, so you've seen some. So that's good.
Okay, so yeah, so you're saying a 1 pound, not a 1 pound in weight coin, a 1 pound in value coin.
That's right.
So the obvious answer would be 1 pound, but yeah, that's the dad joke, isn't it? I have taken lots of coins to the bank in the past, back when coins were still commonly used, and I could have sworn that a pound was a pound, but the problem is I'm also really bad at metric, and this is going to be a metric answer, I'm sure.
Well,
Um,
this.
no, let's go. I'd be even worse at that now. I've lived here too long. I mean, I'm still flabbergasted by the fact that the British use things like stone, because I'm a big guy. I measure myself in boulders rather than stones. Anyway, I'm sorry. Proper answer to this: what is the actual weight? Somewhere between 50 grams and 500 grams.
Cool. And for this, before we accept that your final answer, you can do the equivalent bet test. So if I had it set up, I'd show you. You can actually make, with a protractor and a spinny arrow, I've done this before, a sort of pie chart. And there's online tools, there's various ones you could go and do this, where you want 90% of it to be the green and just 10% of it, a little wedge, to be the red. I'm losing out here. And what you can imagine doing is you get to choose one of these games to play. If the right answer is inside your range you just gave, your 90% range, you would win £1,000. Or you could play that game, or instead we could spin this wheel. And you remember the 90% of it is green. Spin the wheel, and if it comes up in the green part, you win £1,000. So unfortunately, it's just a thought experiment. I'm not giving you money either way, but apparently they've done
I'm holding
studies.
you.
It works just as well either way if I don't give you the real money, which saves me a fortune. If you were to choose between those two games, would you like to play that roulette style spinny, or would you like to do the bet that the right answer is in your range?
Oh, I'd much rather do the roulette spinny. I don't feel that confident.
And that's where most of us are, and that's because we make our ranges too narrow. What you need to do is widen your range as much as you can until you would be equally happy. Roulette wheel or your range, you're just as happy, because that's what 90% is, and lots of us just don't have a sense of it.
Okay,
So
so a pound coin weighs how much? The suspense is killing me.
8.75 grams.
And I said from 50, and which means I have no idea what I'm talking about with grams. Okay.
So this, yeah. In a real one, we'd have several more, but I'll just give you a couple. So let's say
Okay.
the third one. What year was Nina Simone born?
Ooh, good question. So I saw Nina Simone sing once. It was in the 90s. Late 90s. I would say she was in her 70s or 80s. So I will say between, again, I'll go extra generous in case I'm wrong. I'll go between 1890 and 1920. But let's go 1930. Between 1890 and 1930.
Cool.
Although I think she's probably around, if I had to narrow it, I'd say probably around 1910-ish.
So the extra trick you can try here is pros and cons. And if you want, you can pick 2 reasons why the right number is absolutely surely in your date. And the other one is 2 reasons why it really might not be. So could you?
Yeah, I mean, I could go 1850 to 1950, but that just seems absurdly easy, and it's not very useful information at that point. So
The level of use of an information is like, how much do you know about a topic? And I think this is quite like real estimation as well. There'll be some things I'll ask you and you will know to the foot how tall Everest is when it come up, and other things you just don't know about it. And that's true with the work rest estimate as well. Some of these things you've done something just like it before, you're pretty sure it is between 5 and 6 days. Other things I'm going to have to say, but a week and a year. Like, honestly, that's the most I know. And that's where we can be. Nina Simone, because I'm really making you wait for it, was born in 1933. So your adjusted answer had it in there. But again and again, it's the ones that feel like I've made it far too light now. That's what you have to do.
I'll say then, because she's deceased now, I feel like I can get away with it. She was in rough shape for her 60s at that point. Then I thought she was in her 80s, but still sounded amazing. But yeah, wow. Okay, she had a life.
Yeah.
What a fantastic show. Okay, let's just do one more for giggles.
Okay, I'll give you one more. And there's a couple of different tools you can use, but here's a new one. Question you have to think about is how old is Nintendo in years? So
How
the
old is Nintendo?
yeah,
Years.
Nintendo.
Uh, Good question. So I believe, if I remember correctly, that they were not originally a video game company and they did something else. They were definitely around when I was a kid, and I think they were around quite a while before that. And I need to give a range, so let's say between 40 and 150 years old, which is very large, but I have a high degree of confidence about that one.
Cool. And if you want to adjust it, one more tool we'll look at, there's a few we could choose. It's called reverse anchoring. Because I think when we start with, oh, it's probably about 80, I'll try and go a bit either way. That's naturally
Mhm.
we do with lots of things. And the first number you think of pulls you towards that. So you tend
Mhm.
to, and this happens if I suggested it's a thing, you would start for that number. And especially if your boss or an important stakeholder had said it's about 6 months, you would not wait for that. So
So
with
when you're in that meeting with other people and someone says, no one's really sure, and then someone says, how about, this? That's not a really great way to start, is it?
that's, yeah, an anchor that ties us closely to it, and all your things try and move through that, but will struggle. You can try reversing that to say, what is a ridiculously big number? There's no way they were around in the Stone Age. It's definitely not millions of years ago. And you come in, and at some point, all these numbers are ridiculous. They weren't around 2,000 years ago. We'd have heard about it if Jesus had Nintendo cards. At some point, you say, that seems unlikely, but it's not impossible. And that's the edge you're looking for. And
Okay.
similar to
So
the
in
other.
that case, I think definitely not more than 250 years. That seems impossible to me. So 40 to 250.
Cool. And for this one, the right answer is 133 years.
So I was actually pretty close in my original one, and yeah, but that's not bad.
Yeah.
I was right in that they weren't originally a video game company. Did they do playing cards or something like that
Right.
originally?
Yeah. So it was in I think 1890-ish was when they first got started. Yeah. And
That's a
something,
useless piece of trivia that I don't need for anything but this.
what's in your brain now? Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so we talked about a few things. We talked about anchoring and reverse anchoring. We talked about repetition and feedback and pros and cons. There was one other trick that I really liked. I think mostly for the name. What are the lines of hope and despair? Sounds like something from The Princess Bride.
Oh, I love it. So I learned about that from someone called Dr. Sal Freudenberg. I like to cite my sources. And I asked her, she's not sure where she heard it from first. So somebody came up with this, and I've been using it for years. So if you've got a stack of stuff, we're wanting to get all these features or iterations in by some deadline, or we want to know how the team's going to do by our OKR or something. Some other reason you've got a time bound amount, and you're trying to put some work in there. That's a really hard problem. So
Hmm.
what you do with this is make a like fourth ranked list. I'm not saying you might have a big team and people can work on it like 2 or 3 things at a time. It might be like a whole department. But if you got one thing, if it was an absolute disaster of a quarter or whatever you're looking at, and we got one thing out of it, there was sickness and other reasons and stuff.
Hmm.
What do you want the one thing to be? And go all the way down the list. So you're saying if it's this, you're actually happy you got this and not that one? Right. Then the lines come in later where you go away, you use your best, whatever data you've got or educated hunch, whatever you've got to say, how far down this do I think we're going to get? And you put
Hmm.
in somewhere in your line of hope. So above that, it would have to be an astonishingly bad time if we don't get that far. You're like, in this amount of
Hmm.
time, based on everything I know so far, we're getting to there. And that might be how many releases down like a story map or anything like that. Beyond that, you've only got hope. So up here, it feels pretty certain. It was stun if you didn't get it. Beyond the line of you're hoping to get things as you go lower down. So sometimes when people see that, they're like, I don't want to hope to get that. That matters. And that makes them want to reorder the list. And a bit lower down through your hope, it's getting progressively less likely because this is the order of priorities. You get to the line of despair, where once you go
Okay.
past the line, we can just despair of getting any of these in this time set. And
Gotcha.
again, That's super useful because people are like, no, I don't want it. And I want to have a chance of getting it. It makes it really, really clear what's going on. It separates it from who's going to work on this, the big Tetris game. And it's also really useful because you go into something, if those lines are far apart, it communicates really clearly that we're not sure how fast we're going to go, how much work things are going to be, we're uncertain. Ideally, over time, if you're coming towards whatever that deadline was, these are moving close, you're getting more certainty. If you don't, that's a signal something strange is going on. And it lets you do all kinds of things like reorder and reprioritize. And when a new thing comes in, is it more important than this or more important than that? It's a single like visual list of this is what's most important if we worked on it in order, even though you don't have to be working on it. You can swarm on things, you can divide them up however you like.
That's interesting, and it goes into the idea of, you don't want to try and do too much work too far ahead. So all those things in above hope, the things you're pretty confident in, or you desperately need to do, and you're making a real commitment to doing those things. You need to do the work on. You need to have the discovery in place. You need to have everything prepped and ready to go. But beyond that, you need less fidelity, at least until you cross a few things off. But the stuff below that line of despair, there's no point even worrying about it. If we're talking about a now, next, later roadmap, that's the stuff that's firmly in later, and you definitely not doing it anytime soon.
Absolutely. It's super
Okay.
useful for pointing that out to people.
I love that. Okay, Neil, this has been fantastic. We've got time for one more question. For anyone who wants to get better at estimation starting tomorrow, obviously there's the exercise that's in your blog post that we'll have in the show notes. There's some other stuff, but what's the one thing you would suggest people start adding to their practice tomorrow? What's one thing they can do?
Oh, that's a nice question. I think when I was looking back at like sometimes I've used this and it was less work, but sometimes I've had to use this and it seemed more effort. Why can't I use this every time? The pattern I've spotted more and more is where people just don't trust that you're doing a good job. They're wanting to use it against you. Like people are thinking, I have to look out for here. I think nothing works. So and the corollary of that is where people do trust you. I've seen almost anything work. I've had all
Mm.
kinds of anything. If it's used with good intentions and we understand it's our best guess, we can do that. If you're in a high trust environment, pretty much anything works and you're free to experiment them all. And if you don't have that, almost nothing will. So perhaps counterintuitively, if you want to get better at estimating, I might not focus on that at all. It's that sort of trust issue and believing we're all on the same team that I'd go looking into first if you feel that's not in place.
Okay, I lied. I do have one last question. It's a quick one. Of all the people who are going to listen to this episode, Neil, what percentage do you think are going to get better at estimation and use these techniques?
Oh, I love it. I would guess roughly 30% of people. I feel like it's 90, and I know that intuitively I'm going to be wrong about that. So let's say 30%. And if listeners could maybe tell you whether they did or not, we'll get a scientific study done.
Well, do let us know, people. We're really curious. I think 30% is actually a fantastic result. I'm of the opinion that anyone who uses this to get better is a great thing and a wonderful thing that we've done for the world. I would hope it's closer to 90%. That would be even better. But my level of confidence is not quite that high as well. Neil, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. It's been lots of fun. Cheers.
The Product Experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and Chief Product Officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luran Pratt is our producer, and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.